So I'm gonna make a little video about what I consider to be the best job a physician can hold, or best field a physician can go into. So I did medical school in 2001. I graduated in 2005. I ended up doing a family medicine residency, which was 3 years. So altogether, I did a total of 3 of undergrad, 2 of graduate school, 4 of medical school, and 3 more of residency. So 12 years before I was able to get out and do my own thing. And it just so happened that the residency in family medicine that I went to was very strong in emergency medicine. We were, in particular, one of the busiest ERs in the state. But my residency program was worked in sync with that hospital that was the busiest ER in the state. So, in consequence of that, I got a pretty good ER training. And one thing I didn't know as I was going through residency, I'd heard about this and didn't know much about it, but a lot of doctors do what's called moonlighting. And moonlighting is working while while being in your residency program, working in emergency rooms or doing kind of sideline work in other facilities. And you can do this usually after your second year of residency. Some guys did it a little earlier, but usually about your second year of residency, when you've got your license, you've passed all your step exams, and you've gotten to the point where that you feel a little more comfortable working in an emergency room. And while you're in residency, you don't make a lot of money. Let me just take that back. I would just say you're not making the money that a lot of doctors expect to make. While you're training as a resident, you only make about $38,000 a year. At least that's what they were paying when I was there. 40 at the most. All right. And you're going to be living somewhat poor for the first 3 years in residency, and unless you're doing some moonlighting. And the beautiful thing about moonlighting is on the weekends where you're not on call through your residency program, you can go work as a moonlight doctor in some of the local ERs that need ER coverage and are looking for people to cover the ER. And a lot of times the rate won't be as good, but when I was working my first moonlighting job, they were paying $75 an hour. Now, that wasn't a lot of money at the time, but when you go down to these ERs, you're not working a lot either. So you can go down to these ERs and work a whole weekend, starting Friday night until Monday morning, 60-hour shift. All right. And bring home $4,500. And at that time, that was for a resident, that was good extra money, And so I started doing moonlighting second and third year of residency, got real comfortable in the ER, but my training was in family medicine. So I went ahead and did a clinic for approximately 6 years. in a predominantly black community. And the beautiful thing about that was, even though the community wasn't a large community, I was what's it called, a community match student. In other words, there's a community was willing to pay for my half of my tuition, and the university would cover the other half, in agreement that I would go back to that community once I'm finished to practice there for 4 years. Now, for me, it was a win-win. You go back and you practice medicine, doing what you do, and at the end of the 4 years, your debt is cleared. You don't have any debt after that's all done. All right, so you walk away from there with all your medical school debt paid. So when I finished doing my 4 years in that community, I was debt free of medical school debt, and I only had a little residual undergrad debt left. And I had moonlighted enough while I was working there in the community, in the ER, to pay off my undergrad debt clear. So within 4 years, I was completely debt free of any school loans. Now, I want to talk to you about now the career that I'm doing at the moment and why it's probably the best field for up and coming doctors if they can stand it. But what I do now is called contract ER work. And what it is you're not under any kind of contract. You're just independently available to work ERs as you see fit. So what you do is you tell these hospitals that you would like to work their ER, so you apply for privileges there. They approve you, and you let them know what days you're available to work, and they'll tell you what shifts they have available to work, and you choose which ones you want to do. Now, if you're a young, healthy, strong doctor, you don't have a lot of health problems, I would advise you to go get it. And the beautiful thing about the contract doctor work is it's negotiable. So, giving an example, let's say if a hospital needs someone to work on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and nobody else wants to do it. Well, you can tell them, so, well, yeah, I'll work for you, but it's going to be $300 an hour. And they might say, well, we can't pay that much, How about 200? And you say, well, no, I'll meet you in the middle, 250. All right. And they'll say, okay, here it is, you got it. So you're working a 24-hour period, $250 an hour, that's $6,000 in one day. All right, that's how that works. Now, if you work this thing right, you should if you are a go-getter, you should be able to make $10,000 a week. All right, gross. You should gross $10,000 a week and gross $40,000 a month. All right. Now, what you have to do with this is, because you're going to be getting a 1099 at the end of the year. What you have to do with this is you have to pay your taxes quarterly. And your taxes that you pay roughly are going to be around 1/3 of whatever you gross. So if you make $40,000, if you gross $40,000 a month, that means you have $27,000 to spend. All right, bring home. And I'll tell you one of the best things I did. I do have some children. I have one, and Um, one thing I did for her, she's 15 now, but one thing I did was I started a 529 college plan for her when she was born. And I'm going to tell you, that's probably one of the best things I could have done. What I did was I started it, giving it $300 a month, automatically withdrawn from my account, and go straight into that 529 plan, uh, all the way up until today. And today, her college is paid for. It's already paid. I think all the way up until now, I think she's got around. And it also accrued interest while it was building up from her, until she was born, until she was 15 now. And it'll stop, it'll mature when she's 18. So right now it has like $72,000, which is plenty enough to go to college, I would say. I don't know what kind of college she wants to go to, but it's good enough for what I think is good enough anyway. So, but anyways, that was a very good move that I made. All right. Another thing about working the ER is you don't have a boss. Now, you have a boss in the sense of the hospital administration or your ER directors watching what you do to make sure you're not out there just hurting patients. But there's no employer per se. Okay. And that's the beautiful thing about it. You work on your own schedule. You work at your own pace. If you're comfortable enough in the ER, you can work at multiple hospitals, and you choose the ones you're most comfortable with. Okay. And I think that, in my opinion, the clinic is not as good as the ER is for the career of a doctor. I will say this too. I gotta say this in there. You do have to watch your ass while you're, as a black doctor. And I mean, you do need to be very aware of being within the standard of care on whatever you do. If you see some of your colleagues doing some things that taking some shortcuts and taking some liberties on some things, don't you try it. And it's not to say that you're, not to make it sound like you're, a coward or anything. I'm just telling you that there is a certain box that they want you in as a black doctor. You have to be very good. You have to be almost perfect. And even if you do mess up, which is you're gonna mess up, they need to have the understanding that you meant well. You weren't in there being Mr. Too Cool, swagged out, and you look right over something. They need to know that you took that job serious, and if you did have an oversight, that's exactly what it was. It was an oversight. It wasn't negligence. Okay. So that is what I do currently today, and that is what has allowed me to do a lot of the things in the community that I do for my community now. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. Some of the up and coming black doctors out there, look into ER medicine. If you can handle the ER, if you're comfortable enough in the ER, find you some of these low volume hospitals to work in, and you work at your own pace. You don't need a whole lot of money to really live a good life. I know ER doctors that make $750,000 a year, but they're working all the time. All right. You can make a good living, on $30,000 a month or even $20,000 a month, okay, and still have time for your family, have time for your health. Shit, another thing is a lot of these doctors, they get so addicted to working all the time that you can neglect your health, and I'm guilty of this myself. I am very guilty of this. All right. Um, you will do a lot of shifts that involve sleepless nights. You're up hours after hours, not getting the proper amount of rest. And I gotta tell you guys, even though you might be, uh, capable mentally, your body's taking a toll. That non-sleep and those long hours taking a toll on you, and you can't see it a lot of times. So yeah, I would have to say that ER doctoring is probably the best career out here right now. Um, if you can handle the ER. But anyways, peace out. Oh, and go 49ers.